Hello there. I just thought we'd have a little fun today. You could go with me back into time. Uh, I'll be 83 in December, and I've seen a lot of phones. And wow, have they evolved. So, okay, thinking back, every phone was black, and it was a family phone. There was just one phone, and it was usually in the living room. Some people had they sold furniture. You could probably find them in the antique store, but it had a seat and hooked onto it, almost like a desk in a school. Only the desk part wouldn't be in front of you; it was on the side, and the phone sat there, so you could sit down and talk on the phone because the cord was not very long at all. You weren't going to go anywhere. You had to sit down and talk. Now, we also had a big phone book, very heavy. And those were delivered once a year. You would get the new phone book. By the time the new phone book came, your old phone book was all curled up. The pages, it's been used so much. And everything was like in alphabetical order. Like my maiden name, of course, what I'm using now on here is Brown. So there was a whole lot of Browns in there. So you had to go, if you didn't know, maybe, I know when I was dating, sometimes the boys would go, "Do you know how many Browns there are in the phone book?" Because they were trying to find my name, and they didn't know my father's name. So it was just a different time. There was no searching out. You maybe have to ask somebody else if they knew the phone number or whatever, but totally different. All right, so now the first phone I remember is when I was young. It's the youngest. I'm going back as far as I can remember. It didn't even have a dial, and you had a number, but I don't remember. It seemed like it was a short number. This is that clear to me. It's been so long ago, but I remember if you picked the phone up, the operator was always on there, and she would go, "Number, please." It's something. I don't know why she sounded like that. And the number you had was either a Tulip or a Russell. I believe ours was Russell something or other. It might have been 4 numbers. If you remember that, how many numbers or how that was, please tell me. But she would ask you for the number you wanted, and you would give the number of the person you were trying to reach, and she would, on her end, I guess, put those plugs in the wall to try to connect us. And she might say something like, "That number is busy." And if it wasn't busy, it would just ring and ring and ring and ring. And then finally she would come on and say, "I'm sorry, but we can't reach that party right now." So that's how that was. Okay, now I remember that part. Now, the next phone I remember, boy, I'm thinking of different ones. I think the dial came next. So if it was a 1, you had to it had a circle and little holes you put your fingers in, and it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, and if it was at 1, you had to put your finger in the 1 and go all the way around to the beginning, and then it goes, or then 4, and do each number like this till it went through. Okay. They didn't have any kind of machines or anything where you could leave a message or whatever. If it rang and rang and rang, it just means they weren't home, or they just didn't want to answer the phone. You couldn't leave any message. You just had to call back later. Now, long distance was a big deal. If somebody called you long distance, they were either someone died, or I don't know, maybe had a baby, or it was some big deal. People just didn't call long because it cost. the longer you talked, the more money it was. And you couldn't hear very well. It was very crackly, and everybody has to go, shh, 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 shh. It's long distance. It was a big deal. And everybody would kind of gather around to hear because they know it had to be something really important. Party lines or a private line. I believe for a private line, I was young and didn't take care of bills. I'm believing it was more expensive to have a private line. If you didn't have a private line, then you had a party line, which means you had a ring and your neighbors, maybe there were 4 families on that line, and each one had a different ring. It could be 4 rings, 3 rings, 2 rings, whatever. And if you heard your ring, then you went and you picked the phone up. The problem was children, particularly, and I'm sure it was adults who were bored or lonely or whatever, they would be picking the phone up in their other homes and listening to your conversation. But sometimes when you're talking, you could kind of, it was given away because you kind of hear a noise or something. And I can always remember my mother yelling on the phone, "You kids, get off that line." Or if you were on the phone for too long, talking on the phone too long, the other people, all these other families may want to use the phone. So they could pick the phone up and you could tell they're like breathing on there, and then they're mad, so they slam the phone down like, "Get off the line." Or they'd tell you, "Hey, there's other people who want to use this phone." Yeah, it was, oh my goodness, we have totally come a long way for sure. Oh, let's see what else. One phone, there was always one phone in the house, very short cord. Phone booth. If you were out somewhere and you wanted to call home, you had to try to find a phone booth. The phone booth, you had to have change, and I believe it was a dime to make a call. Then, if you're talking too long, you had to keep putting money in. But I remember going into the phone booth as kids, and we always go down in the little slot down there because change would come out. Say you put a quarter in, I guess you get change back, and it would fall down in there. And a lot of times people wouldn't take the change. They'd forget, and they'd leave the phone. So we would get that change out. When you talk long distance you'd be on a phone in a booth, and you're trying to call somebody long distance. I mean, the operator would cut in and say, "Please deposit, so and so much, a quarter or whatever." And you had to keep putting money in to talk. And if you ran out of money, you were just cut off, and that's all there was. Memorizing numbers. We, with our family and our friends, we had all these numbers memorized. Or you had at home, there was always a little black book with the phone numbers of people you knew. And those are precious things to have those numbers. Now they're right on our phone all the time. The next phone that came out, well, the first phone was just the operator. The second phone that came out was the dial. The one after that was the numbers that you push button. That was better. Then I think the answering machine came out. People started getting answering machines because you could leave a message and they would come home and they would hit the button and play back the messages. And you could call that person back or not, either way. Next, they came up with call waiting. So you'd be on the phone talking to one person and someone else would call you. And then you push a button to hold the first person. They couldn't hear. And then you'd answer the second person. And then you had to decide which phone call was more important, the first person or the second person. So, yeah, we don't have nothing like that anymore, do we? You know, now the phones that we have, they're with us all the time. And if we go somewhere, we leave the house and we forget our phone, woo, catastrophe. Oh my God, I forgot my phone. You just feel so disconnected and lost. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Where we used to leave the house, we'd be gone all day. We didn't know what was going on unless we went to somebody's house and asked to use their phone, which we sure didn't do that much. But now we are totally connected to our phone. But I want to get to a point about just manners about phone calls. Now, I could be wrong about this. I feel like if you are in this talkative mood, you just want to talk with your best friend or somebody. I mean, you want to talk, and when we want to talk, we want to talk. You got something you want to talk over with them, or you just want to catch up with them. Well, maybe you do right then, and that's a good time for you, but it's not always the right time for them. So I think we need to think about that, because they could be in the middle of a meal. They could be in the middle of a heavy discussion with their husband. They could have company. I could think of a lot of things I won't even say. But it's not always a good time for them to talk. So I don't think it's polite to call someone and just start yakking away and not you. If you're going to just call, at least say, is this a good time for you to talk, or should we can always talk a little bit later? Or what's really nice is just send a message to someone. And on your phone, just send a message and say the same thing without calling. Can you talk? If not, we can do it later. And usually I'll get a message back and they'll say, yeah, and then we'll call each other and sit down and talk. And that way they're kind of prepared. They can go get a cup of coffee, they can relax, they can get off somewhere where they can talk. And now they're going to enjoy talking to you. If you don't do this and you just call someone, you just presume, well, I'm ready to talk, so they're ready to talk. Now, tell me if you've had this happen to you. And am I wrong? No, I've not heard anybody say anything about manners when it comes to this. But that's me, maybe. So, okay. Give me your thoughts on that. And also, do you remember any of these things that I'm talking about? These phones, or any of you that old that you remember all this? And add some more things to it that I'm forgetting what it was like. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. Bye-bye.